Check, check.
Checkity check.
Okay. Let's try this again. Hollander,
Here.
Frederickson,
Here.
Fuller,
Here.
Glasser,
Delighted to be here.
Leto,
Here.
Martin,
Here.
Bassett.
Here.
All right, there is no absent members, so item B, adoption of the agenda. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
All opposed? Cool. Item C, approval of minutes. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes from February 29th, 2024 NFP meeting?
So moved. Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Item D, public comments. If there are any comments from the public, please come forward, state your name, and you'll have 3 minutes to address the board. Please note this is a general public comment period. There will be a separate public comment period for the action items under new business. Looks like there are none. Do we have any callers on the phone? All right, no call-in comments. Item E, board member comments. Are there any comments from the board?
I was just going to point out for the public and for the board members, I am an applicant and a board member tonight. So for item F1, I'll be abstaining from voting or having any discussion for the board portions of that item.
All right. Item F, new business. Approval of a recommendation to the Zoning Board of Appeals to grant relief from NFP slope and NFP slope setback standards for the Bow in the Clouds Trail Project at 3401 Nazareth Road. Are there any comments from the public related to this item?
Yeah. Well, we can do the presentation and we'll come back to the public comment period.
On? Is that, it's on, so I need to really, okay, you're right, I need to kiss it very closely. So we're working, OCBA Landscape Architects is working with the Southwest Michigan Land Conservancy, as we have been for many years, at Bow in the Clouds Nature Preserve, which is off of Nazareth Road, just on the east side of Nazareth, north of Gull. And this project is a second phase of trail development. We developed the first phase 5 or 6 years ago, and that was primarily on the upland area of the site. Now the next phase is to try to provide access to the lower area, and there's a big portion of the site is wetland, and we want to get access into the wetland for as many people as possible. So the site, as I said, is on the west side of Nazareth, just north of Gull. The area that is wetland is shown is in a slightly lighter green on the aerial photo. This map represents the parcel in its entirety outlined in magenta. The black and white line that cuts the northern rectangle off is actually in Kalamazoo Township, not in the city of Kalamazoo. The blue line that snakes through the property is Spring Valley Stream, flows into Spring Valley Lake. And then the light yellow-orange line is the existing trail system. And we're trying to expand that and get into the wetland. The existing trail in the wetland, as you'll see in a minute, is on a pretty old boardwalk system that the Sisters of St. Joseph installed. They owned this property for many years and then donated it to Southwest Michigan Land Conservancy, maybe 15 or 20 years ago. The goal is to create trails for two purposes. One, generally for community access, so anybody can use the trail. We're looking for universal access, so we want to have gentle grades on the slopes of the trails and a firm and stable surface. Secondly, there's a connector sanitary sewer that runs through the site, and there are, I think, 6 manholes within the site that the city has never been able to maintain in their 40 years of existence because they can't get to them. So part of the design for the trail system is to provide access for the city public services department to get their the vacuum truck up fairly close to some of the manholes, and then the last stretch of trail will provide access to manholes for what they call as an easement machine. It's basically a big hose reel on wheels that they can lug down to get to a manhole that's remote, too far away to get the vacuum truck to. As I said, this is phase 2 of the plan. We did phase 1 in 2019, and originally phase 2 was pre-planned, pre-COVID. I think we even came before your board back in 2019. And then the pandemic hit, so it got put on hold. We have worked with Department of Public Services during the design phase to provide access that they think they can use and get to their manholes. So the part of the layout of the trail system is driven by their desire to get as close to the manholes as possible. And while the city does have a legal access easement to get to the sewer, right now they have no physical capability of getting there, and that's part of the goal of this project. As I said, we're trying to provide universal access, so the grades are flat on the trails, the surface is firm and stable is the phrase, and we'll be providing resting areas for people to pass one another. I've said a lot of this. The sanitary manholes are inaccessible without impacting slopes. It's really not physically possible to get a trail down to the manholes without crossing some areas of the protected slopes. There's just no way to do it. And I would point out that the NFP does allow for maintenance of existing impervious surfaces and structures on the slope. We'll be using core or coconut mats and native seed mixes to stabilize the slopes. We do have an Eagle wetland permit issued pre-pandemic. We may have to obtain an amendment since we've changed the layout of the boardwalk in the wetland and reduced it by quite a bit. And we recognize that there are other permits and steps to go through, soil erosion control. We've asked for a rare species review from Michigan National Features Inventory. Have not yet heard back from them. And we're still planning to build this year, so we're moving forward. Just a few slides of the existing conditions. At the entrance, you see the trail on the right. That's the existing trail up on the upland. It essentially indicates what the new trails will look like. There is an existing old barn up on the upland area. We're not proposing to do anything up there. In addition, on the upland, on the western edge of it, there's this Phase 1 overlook deck. It gives you a little view of the wetland beyond that we're trying to get access into. And this is a shot of the gnarly old box elder tree, which is approximately in the location where we're proposed to make the new connection to the existing trail. So now we're going to dive down the slope. And this is a view back up that slope into the wooded area that's up in the upland area. And this is down low near the creek. There's a little platform down there, a little flat area that the trail will be on, and that's where the sanitary sewer is. So that's where we're trying to get to. And this is a shot that shows down low. You can see a small area to the left center of a little brown area. That's the creek down low. We're going to try to get to. And this is the first stream crossing we want to replace. As you can see, it's not very wide. The handrail does not comply with anything, and it's not even barrier-free. There's steps at the end. And this is not a very good shot, but it's hard to depict the this is essentially the proposed location of the new stream crossing, first stream crossing. We're basically rotating the crossing, I don't know, maybe 15 or 20 feet to the north. And this is an existing trail past the first stream crossing, and in that area, which is the western edge of the property or the proposed work, we're basically following the existing trail for the new trail, essentially improving the existing trails, not doing any new work. And this is that little old boardwalk that the sisters installed years ago out into the wetland. We're basically replacing it in essentially the same location. And that's the second stream crossing. Again, not barrier-free, inadequate handrails, etc. And then from here, Mitch is going to take over and talk about wetlands and etc.
Steering on here?
What's that?
Are you steering on here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just the arrows.
Cool. Thanks, Ken. All right, can everybody hear me okay? Great. So this image shows a general wetland delineation. This is the National Wetlands Inventory, freely available online from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service that's updated periodically. We did have a site-level wetland delineation conducted, and you'll see that reflected in the different drawings that you have in your set there. You can see where the stream goes through the township area. It's mostly upland, but the site-level delineation shows a few more wetlands that are picked up. It just gives you a general sense of general wetland layout, primarily in the southwest portion of the project area. This image shows the overall layout of the proposed trail. So the dark, almost black line on there are the proposed new trails, and the lighter lines they're more just outlined there are the existing trails. So you can see the 5 red dots are the existing manhole covers in this portion of the site. The one at the northeast can be accessed from Nazareth Road, but you can see the other 4 are pretty tightly linked to the trail layout itself. All of the surfaces shown there, with the exception of the wetland boardwalk in the southwest corner, will be that crushed aggregate that will be to the correct grade to support the weight of the city vehicles and the just general foot traffic for the site itself. So that first portion coming in from the east, where you can see that little box in the existing gravel parking lot, that section will be 10 feet wide, and that will be the access point for the big Vector trucks that you see going down the city streets. It will go, they'll be able to go up to about that second box on the west where there's a trail intersection, if you can see that. And from there, the easement machine that Ken described will be able to kind of radiate around the trail system and will be able to be serviced from the hose that can reach from one to the other. So we don't have to have this enormous truck be able to go through the entire site. So this was thought out with the city wastewater division folks. There's a little portion that's a spur that ends in that last red dot in the southwest. We're considering that an option here. Our budget's probably not going to allow us to complete that loop or even that spur, but depending on how bids come in, we thought we would put it in front of you and include it in the application, just so you can see. In addition to that, you can see the dark line to the north of where all the trail developments are. That's Spring Valley Creek. And then the patches of wetland, more localized wetland that were delineated on site by a consultant are shown there in the hash gray. And then the southwest portion, you can see the wetland picks up. It's much more extensive in that part of the preserve. And then each of those individual circles correspond to trees that have the size and species denoted there. And then as Ken pointed out before, I just want to emphasize there's a thin dark line that goes from right to left on the map, and that is the township city line. So most of the proposed trail system that you see with the manhole covers to the north, the new trail is in the township. Okay, so this map shows the specific natural features that are found on site and how the proposed trail development would interact with those sites. The only feature based on previous consultations with city staff that we're applying for variance for, of course, is the slope and slope setback. But just wanted to point out the rest of the features just so you're aware. I mentioned the creek and the wetlands. Along it, there are two black lines that are delineating that buffer that are the water resource and wetland setbacks denoted in NFP. You can see the trail will skirt through them in a couple of small areas, but non-motorized trails and infrastructure, including sewers, are permitted uses in those setback areas. In addition to that, you can see the individual trees there. We will have to remove, I think it was 13 trees that I counted. Those are all in the, let's see, jump ahead here. I don't know if they're shown here. This is a subset of all the drawings that you have in front of you, but if you can see those little X's, the trees, all 13 trees will be in the township for that. We are working on a woodland delineation for the southwest portion of the site where we're following the existing trail, just to confirm the woodland delineation and denote any individual trees that will be impacted through that. But because the site qualifies as a woodland, the allowable, the way that tree removal would work is it would be a part of an allowable or removable portion of that woodland. And so this site, the city parcel is about 43% wooded, which means up to about 5 acres could be removed. Obviously, our goal is to preserve as much of the woodland as possible. That's what we're all about. So we're talking about a handful of trees that we may need to remove based on trail layout in the city portion. So we'll follow up with Nolan and city staff on that future delineation. And then the green dotted lines just give you a sense of the critical root zones of the trees. Again, we're trying to avoid larger trees, especially oaks and hickories, as much as possible. There are a number of non-native trees out there, including Siberian elms. So if we can push the trail in one way or another that promotes removing the non-native trees instead of impacting potentially the native ones, that's what we've chosen to do. But those critical root zone areas give you a sense of kind of trying to thread the needle and avoid any potential impacts to any native trees shown there. And then the last feature I'll point out on this map is the areas in kind of that salmon, orangey pink color. In the center of those are where those slopes meet or exceed 20% as outlined in the NFP ordinance, and then the actual colored portion are the setbacks, the slope setbacks. So you can see, especially based on the previous slide where the manholes are located, they're right on top of and within some of those 20% slope areas. So the trail is meant to access those, as well as one manhole being within the critical root zone of a large oak. So trying to go around that as much as possible. This shows areas where additional erosion control will be needed. So we'll have our standard county level SESC permit, which includes things like silt fencing, any requirements that they're going to have us do, of course, we'll do. In addition to that, on some of these slopes, we'll have heavier core or coconut fiber matting and have them be staked down after any excavation earthwork is done. And we'll probably use a combination of plugs and native seed to stabilize underneath. In addition to that, we tend to use split rail fences to kind of try to guide the public use and access so that once those areas are stabilized, the vegetation can establish, knowing that this area is going to get more and more popular the more the trails are developed. So also part of our long-term plan. So yeah, those dark areas are erosion control areas. This gives a more close-up view of that option to potentially get to that fifth manhole cover. If not, this is part of a much larger project to overhaul the entire trail system at the preserve, so we'll get there at some point if not in this phase. And then you can see in the southwest portion there the upland trail snakes around to get into what will be about 140 feet of boardwalk replacement and one bridge replacement as well in that hashed wetland area. And these are some just close-up detailed views of erosion control and some universal access features like benches with companion spaces, how trails will be graded and set up. And the lower left shows the stream crossing. We had a lot of erosion problems from people trying to access the stream, so we decided to create a series of large stone steps so that people can do that. We can direct that in a safer, more ecologically sensitive way, and those are the details shown there on the lower part. I should also mention we have our Eagle wetland permit in hand, where all of this has been reviewed by state environmental staff. And then this shows the detail of the, let's see here, of the bridge crossings. So we've got two bridge crossings. We're using the same product as we're using for the boardwalk itself. It's a steel framed boardwalk, so it should rest on grade in most places, which means it won't go below grade. Ideally, we have some engineering kind of reviewing that, except in the portions of the bridge footings where we need more stability and where we have a longer span that we're reaching. But essentially, it'll rest on the wetland. It will be supported by spreading out the weight over top of that. So we'll have regular wooden decking on top like you'd see on a boardwalk, but it will have a steel framework that's much more sustainable and long-lasting and has a 100-year guarantee. So hopefully I won't be replacing it. And then this is the next section just showing the boardwalk in a little more detail. You can see there's curbing or edging on there for chairs, vehicles, and just sort of containment of the foot traffic, and a little bit more detail about how those structures are fastened together and used. And did I forget anything, Ken? I think so. Okay. Great. Any questions at this time?
Hello. Under the original Part 303, 301 permit, were the impacts to wetlands and or inland lakes and streams small enough that mitigation was not required? Okay, thank you. Kind of looks that way.
And
Yeah.
in fact, we, as I mentioned earlier, we greatly reduced the amount of boardwalk that we're proposing. I think the original plan was 540 feet or something.
Yeah.
We're down to 140.
Thank you.
And that portion where you see the first stream crossing, I don't know if you probably can't see my mouse here, can you, or can you? Okay, so for this portion, we're actually kind of trying to thread the needle. You can see there's these wetland delineated portions along the stream here, and there's sort of this gap in between, and that's where the existing bridge is. And so by proposing that too, we're really minimizing any impact to wetland that doesn't have to be impacted. And existing conditions are impacting the waterway as is, so should help improve that actually.
Yeah, I just had you may have just clarified it there, but I was curious about where exactly that stream crossing was, because I know there's some really loose kind of seepage on up and downstream of where the current stream crossing is, and those seem like critical areas to not be impacted by
Yep.
by shifting where that stream crossing is.
Yeah, these areas here and these patches along the stream are kind of a seepy, springy, wet meadow type community. And so the first crossing is sort of adjacent to those areas, but is using the already impacted sort of footings on either side. That's more upland soil type. So there did our soil borings out there, so those are nice and well drained, and we feel confident in putting stable footings in there. And then you can see as it moves kind of to the southwest, keeping to where the existing trail is, kind of a buffer off of that wetland edge there, and then replacing the existing portion will go right through that wetland, of course. So then the second wetland crossing will be delineated wetland on both sides. And those will have helical piers basically twisted down into the footings. It's spec'd out to be 18 feet wide, but we tried as much as possible to kind of thread the gap and use the existing infrastructure as much as we can to kind of minimize any new impacts. Did that get at your question? Okay.
So I wonder if you could speak a little bit to how you're going to manage the construction of the removal of the existing boardwalk as well as installation to minimize impacts?
Ideally, what we're thinking is to create the wetland, create the upland trails first so that we can use small tracked equipment to carry sections of boardwalk down that will be within the realm of the weight of what they'll be designed for city vehicles. And so that by creating that new kind of robust upland, aggregate firm infrastructure, we can use that to get the sections of wetland boardwalk to the area without kind of making a mess of the current trail system and vegetation. So I think sequence-wise, that's what we're hoping to do. Let's see, anything else that you would note on that?
No, I would support that. I think that.
Then answer your question as far as kind of a sequence.
Yeah, it does. I was wondering if you knew any more information specific about the boardwalk. I see you have to remove the existing and put in new. So I was just wondering how the
Yeah.
construction process for that goes.
Yeah, we'll probably also, while we're out there, have mats of some kind, like plywood or something like that, that people can, if people are going to be going back and forth to access the boardwalk to try to, because you're right, it's a deconstruction project as well as a construction project. But we'll probably use, plywood or some kind of wetland mat so that staff can walk on that instead of repeatedly walking over top of the wetland adjacent to the old. Pull that out and then use the track vehicles to haul that material away. And then the great thing about the new boardwalk is that when the wood is time for the wood to be replaced in 15, 20 years or something, you don't have to deconstruct the whole thing. You just have to remove the decking and the rest can stay. So yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Regarding slope or potential slope impacts, it was pretty much mentioned that you're going to kind of be skirting the setback areas, but perhaps not inundating the actual slopes themselves? Is there going to be cut and fill requirements, and are those numbers available?
We don't have those numbers available to you today.
Okay.
The intent is to essentially balance on site, so where our cut and our fill should equal.
Okay.
Be equal. So that's the goal.
So you won't have
We
to
don't want
transport.
import or export.
Okay, thank
It
you.
costs too much money.
Yep. And one last little question. You mentioned something about a couple steps here and there. Will there be measures such that it's wheelchair accessible still past those areas?
So the steps will be adjacent to the bridge. So yeah, number 3 on this image, if you can see that, it's C4 in your packet. But it shows the hash mark on the kind of south and east. That's the bridge. So that will be universally accessible, 6 feet wide. So that will be able to be crossed by a motorized device or a chair.
Okay.
And then the adjacent steps are shown to it will be right up next to it. And we've been talking with a stream restoration specialist as a consultant too. And the steps we're thinking will also help to kind of protect the footings underneath the bridge as well, to kind of divert water and any activity that might degrade those. And we were talking with the Eagle wetland permit specialist out there, noting that people really want to connect with the water. And so we were seeing a lot of erosion just based on people walking around the bridge.
Sure.
And she actually suggested this design based on I think it was a Trout Unlimited project in Marshall, where they used this design for angler access to the river, basically. So that's the idea anyway.
Cool. Thank you.
Can you talk a little bit about the crushed aggregate trail surface and why that was the alternative you went with, like any other alternatives you looked at, why that was the best? Just the only concern I know of is just fines potentially washing into the wetland from that type of surface. But I know you're under a lot of constraints, so, but I'm just curious to hear some of the thought process behind that.
Yeah, great question. So I think that in our natural areas, we're always trying to balance the presence of infrastructure, but trying to keep the site natural as well. So I would say, in short, from that perspective, it's somewhere in the middle where it can provide a firm surface for chairs and accessibility while not going sort of full asphalt or full concrete, and it's much more repairable. You can box grade it and things like that to kind of reset the slope. As far as just a natural surface trail would be an alternative, but that would create problems with supporting the weight of the vehicles and accessibility. So I think, I don't have them right in front of me, but I think the 10-foot wide trail, I think it's 6 inches of 23A, which is more of an angular stone with an inch of fines on top. So hopefully the big stones will have enough spaces integrated into them that the fines will fall on top of it. And we're definitely going to keep an eye on it and make sure, especially in those areas. And hopefully the side slopes should be, maybe 2% as far as where it's going along the river and wetland to really limit that. And then if we get vigorous native vegetation established adjacent, that should hopefully catch any fines that might wash off with rain. But it's definitely something that will require follow-up and maintenance and observation, all that.
And it's
I'm
permeable.
just going to add to that, just one detail. You mentioned 2%. That'll be the maximum cross slope on the trails. That's to comply with universal access design. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
Yep.
Question just to the board. Does the landscape plan for the slope restoration as well as just general restoration of disturbed areas come back to NFP?
Yeah, so this is essentially first touch point for the project. Right now, we're just handling the recommendation for that slope setback impacts. That will go to the Zoning Board of Appeals on June 13th for final approval by the ZBA. And then that is, once those processes are done, they would then initiate site plan review And so then those items would come back. So this project would come back to the NFP board through the site plan review process.
Does Kalamazoo Township have a similar, are they going to have to look at the portion of the site that's in the township?
We've been in contact with them, and their attitude has been that since most of the project is in the city, they're going to rely on the city's review process. Just got an email today confirming that.
All right, are there any public comments related to this item? All right, Jamie, how about any call-in comments? Can I entertain a motion to approve the approval of the recommendation to the Zoning Board of Appeals to grant relief from the NFP slope and slope setback standards for the Bow in the Clouds Trail project at 3401 Nazareth Road?
So moved.
Support?
Support. All right. This will need a roll call vote. Nolan, will you please call roll?
Hollander,
Yes.
Frederickson,
Yes.
Fuller,
Yes.
Glasser,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Bassett.
Yes.
All right, motion passes. Moving on to, yep.
Yes, thank you.
Cool. All right, moving on to item 2, motion to appoint NFP board members to serve on an NFP nominating subcommittee. Nolan, can you provide some background on this action item?
Yeah, so we have one board seat open. Technically, Director Glasser's term expired in March, but he is serving until we can get an applicant that has the requisite experience in the geology or hydrogeology fields to fill that position. So still on the board, but the nominating committee would be, ideally probably 3 board members that could work with myself and just conduct some reviews of applications that come in and then potentially request an interview with applicants just to learn a little bit more. So.
All right, any discussion or comments from board members?
Have you had any applicants yet?
Yes, so there was one applicant in April, but background is primarily in a different field. There has just recently been another applicant within the field. So only 2 applications, but staff have been reaching out to external networks. Board members have also assisted in that to promote that there is an open seat. So we've just been waiting on getting applications in.
So are we looking for volunteers for that subcommittee right now?
That's correct.
All right.
I'd love to nominate Bobby since he has the requisite experience. If we can do that.
I'm happy to look at those with folks, sure. Thanks.
You're welcome. I'm actually willing to do it too. I did it last time, so I've done it before. It's pretty straightforward, but if that helps since I've done it.
Yeah.
I don't mind. That sounds like a fine time to me. So.
All right.
2-3.
All right. Can I entertain a motion to appoint Director Glasser, Director Fuller, and Director Bassett to serve on an NFP nominating subcommittee?
So moved.
Support.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. All right. Item 3, motion to appoint NFP board members to an NFP Phase 3 subcommittee. Nolan, can you provide some background to this action item?
Yeah, so those of you who didn't volunteer for the nominating committee, here's another opportunity. We've talked about this a few times, specifically towards the end of last year and early this year, but essentially there was a plan for a phase 3 of NFP, and it was more curated towards public and community stewardship, as well as some of the items we've talked about in terms of an NFP guide, developing that. And so the idea would be, again, a few board members could meet at a regular interval to go through ideas, items that they'd like to see, potentially pushed forward as far as NFP Phase 3 is concerned. Should be a little less stressful than Phase 2, but again, it's just kind of the next step in the board's work. So that subcommittee could report back to the board at large at the regular meetings. So,
Is the point of phase 3, if I get it right, to be more proactive than reactive? So to shift the balance in that?
yeah, there's a couple prongs to it. So the NFP guide is something that Jamie McCarthy had started a little bit with staff. It was essentially like post phase 2, we knew there was a lot more properties coming into the overlay district, potentially increasing the number of projects coming forward. And so the guide development part would be basically a resource internally and externally to kind of understand the NFP at a very broad sense and understand some of the nuanced processes that go along with it, right? That it's really nested within our site plan review process, but as tonight shows, if a variance is involved, it's a slightly different trajectory before a site plan begins. So it's basically meant to be a one-stop shop, maybe a glossary of terms, a document that can really iron out some of those things. And it's really meant to be a resource for the community. So there's that part of it, and there's also, it had been discussed just very broadly, and this would be the duty of the nominating, or of not the nominating committee, the Phase 3 subcommittee, but kind of understanding what the community stewardship piece could look like. The city has been, as an example, been doing a lot of work around stewardship of our public trees in the public realm, management of those trees. So Phase 3 was kind of taking a look at, the community as a whole when it comes to some of these resources. So that's the idea.
I'd be happy to volunteer for that one. I think, over the years, we've kind of seen, as much as you try to think through all the different scenarios where some of the different proposals fall, where there's gray area or questions, or it seems like more guidance could have been helpful in certain cases. So be happy to offer a perspective on that.
Yeah, I'd like to volunteer as well, and I think I could provide a lot of viewpoint from a consultant in walking through the process and how we can provide them better resources to give them insight onto why we're having some of the restrictions.
Nolan? At this point, though, there are not any notions of incorporating additional properties or adjusting the boundaries of the overlay as part of Phase 3?
Not currently. That doesn't mean that isn't something that can be discussed in the future.
Okay.
I think we're still close enough to phase 2 where I think we're still seeing how projects come forward and what that looks like. And
Yes.
I think we've been doing that, or you've been doing that as a board with some of the projects that have come forward. So part of phase 3 as well, I mentioned it a bit too, is sort of the annual reporting that the board could do and as like a review process, just letting the community know like, hey, here's some of the projects we worked on we're a part of as a board. Here's, what percentage was that residential zone versus a commercial? So things like that. And it's, so I think that could be really kind of tied to that.
Just to clarify too, are people able to, if they want to, work on both of these subcommittees for this?
Yeah, I don't see a problem with that.
I can join on the phase 3 subcommittee as well. All right. Are there any comments from the public related to this item? Any call-in comments? Can I entertain a motion to appoint Director Leto, Director Frederickson, and Director Martin to serve on an NFP Phase 3 subcommittee?
So moved.
Support.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Item G, unfinished business. Looks like there is none.
Hey, can I ask for a clarification? So for City of Kalamazoo boards and committees, it is, I believe, noted that the applicant is supposed to have a residence within the city limits. For this board, since there's an expertise background level, are there any exceptions for that for potential candidates for this board that you know of?
I can speak to that. This board's bylaws and within the ordinance specifically allows board members who are non-residents of the city.
Okay, thank you.
Director McNellis was in Texas Township. I don't know
Yeah.
what his mailing address was, but
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
Yeah. So
That gives us some latitude in terms of.
yes.
That's
So
what I-
there's certain fields or expertise that we need to fill for this board specifically. That's one of the main reasons why that's flexible there.
Good deal. Thank you.
Cool. Item H, staff reports and updates. NFB board applications. Nolan, do you have any more updates on that?
No, spoiled the surprise a little earlier, but so far there's been 2 since, consistently conducting outreach to fill that position since March. So I think that probably just speaks to how it can be difficult to fill these different fields of expertise. It's also interesting because we're almost through a whole board cycle. So, in the coming years, we'll have a completely new board, but it's amazing it's been quite that long. But yeah, no new updates here other than what we've covered.
Nolan, what background are you looking for?
Right now, Director Glasser's background is in geology. So that type of field is one that we need to have on the board, just given the fact that there are many properties within the city's NFP overlay district that includes slope, at least as it pertains to, interacting with other primary features like woodland and water and wetland. So that is really what we need to fill on the board.
Cool. So item I, communications and announcements. Are there any communications or announcements from NFP board members or city staff? All right, adjourned.